Hey there, West of here with Joe Dutkiewicz and Brian Brogen, and we've got a neat topic today. We've been doing some different stuff over the last few weeks, really focused around the Voices for Leadership Authors Retreat workshop coming up on April 14th and 15th in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're really excited about that, but we're trying to make sure that we're adding value and really making a big punch on the front end. So, hey, if this is something that I can get to, if any way possible, you get the most juice from the squeeze. So today, our topic is going to be getting the gusto from your next event. Now, I would challenge you to really, really think into this, whether you're here with us live, you're watching it some other time, you're catching the recording. Think into the things that we talk through, because I believe whether it's with us in April, and we'd encourage you to be part of that event, especially if you're an author, one of the collaborating authors in Voices for Leadership. But even if you're somebody that just goes to events for professional development, how do you make sure you get the most out of it and get that thing, that elusive thing called return on investment? And oftentimes people say, hey, it's intangible, it's not really measurable from leadership. And I call BS on that every single time, because it's very tangible and it's very measurable if you know how to do it. So, Joe, with that, will you share the wisdom that you've got on our sheet? It's something I don't want to take the thunder, but it's awesome. You've got some wisdom here. We'll start off with.
Well, I think to set it up is how are you going into this event? That's the main question. Is are you just going to attend? You and Wes, you and I were talking before we got on here about uh, is the boss expecting something from us? Do we have to provide a report or presentation about what we learned? There was a time in the when I was working in the banking that they got really strict about, we got to cut costs and we only send one person from the company, but you got to tell us and you got to share what you learned because the others are not able to go. And I prepared like a 10-page report of things I learned and took away, and they never asked me to do that again. So but I think it's the attitude, mainly, are you going in with this desire to achieve something, or are you just going because, hey, the boss gave me a free trip to name the place, Hawaii or whatever?
So that brings me. So Brian, I told you guys before, this is a topic that I could talk about for hours without any notes whatsoever. I remember I believe it was 2005 or six. At that point in time, I'm part of a committee that helps plan this huge international behavior-based safety event with one of the biggest companies in the industry, and I'm representing our company. I'm on the committee planning thing for this big annual event with about 3,000 safety professionals from all over the world. And I'm waiting for one of the supervisors from the facility I worked at to come in. It's late at night. He caught a late flight I was there a day early, so I'm waiting to make sure he gets checked in and just take care of him. And one of my buddies on this planning committee comes out. It's like 11:30 or midnight. He comes out in the rotunda in this big conference center hotel, and he says, "Hey, Wes, did you see these two guys just leave and walk out the door? Did they go this way or this way down the street? They had some they were with some ladies that weren't their wives, and they didn't necessarily look like they were dressed appropriately." And I said, "Oh yeah, I did. They just got in that limo that drove out." "Oh dear God," the guy says. And I see him the final day. I didn't see him the next day. It was a 3-day event. I see him the final day just before we're leaving to head to the airport to fly back home. And this was in Dallas at the time. And says, "Hey, Bobby, did you ever find your guys?" He said, "I haven't talked to them since." Now, here's why I'm saying that. My guess is if they got any gusto from that event, it wasn't the gusto the company paid for them to be there wanted them to get, right? So where I was trying to bait you into doing, Joe, was to share your philosopher quote at the bottom of the note sheet. Do you want to touch on that, or do you want me to roll with the philosopher?
Just go for it. As a good
Now,
philosopher, I mean, anything that this guy says is pretty great.
yeah, Brian, I referenced one of my favorite songs is "Living in an Amish Paradise" by the great Weird Al Yankovic. And the quote that Joe has for us is, "Now's the time to go for all the gusto you can grab. You'll have plenty of time to be low key when you're laid out on the slab." So Brett's face. This is awesome. So anyway, I share that to say, gosh, how do you go into an event, any event, especially if it's the Voices for Leadership author retreat in April 14th, 15th in St. Petersburg? How do you make sure that you're going in with a plan? You know exactly why you're going, you know what you want to achieve at the event, who you want to meet at the event, how you can get value from it moving forward. So that's some of the pieces that we want to chat with you about today. So, guys, jump in wherever you want to. Like I say, I could go for days on this. I don't want to. Let's keep it to 30 minutes or so, but jump in and lead the way.
Well, Joe and Wes, y'all set this up really well, and some great ideas and thoughts around basically being intentional. You know, in our circle, we hear about the importance of being intentional. And you know what? I think it's an overused and underutilized activity. And so as we go to any event, let's say we're going to a networking event, our chamber commerce meeting, whatever it is, we need to be prepared and understand, you know, what is the event for to begin with, and why am I going to it? Is the two things, the questions you need to ask yourself. In fact, Wes, as we began to plan our event, this Voices for Leadership Authors Retreat, Wes said, "What's in it for me as an attendee?" And it was a very, you know, difficult question for us to answer in this planning stages, but that was how we set this up to bring value to those that will attend as an author, coach, trainer, speaker, or like you said, someone just wants to increase and develop themselves and understand the things that we're doing at our retreat will help you in life and your professional development.
Brian, you nailed it. I mean, Cindy and I, we followed what we learned from John Maxwell so many years ago, the final week of every year between Christmas and New Year. We sit down and we plan, okay, what are the things that we should do less of this coming year? What are the things we should never do again? What are the things that we need to do more of? And what are the things that we've never done that we should be? And this past year, one of the biggest conversation pieces was, what are the networking events? Because we've done a lot, because we started our business almost 8 years ago, and it was a matter of, hey, how can we get visible? We've done a mountain of networking events, but we've also realized, hey, some have run their course, and there's some that we've not been involved with. So we've decided we need to be very, very strategic about what we do, and very strategic about what we don't do. And that intentional, I loved how you said that, Brian, because intentional is overused but underutilized. And gosh, I just went, what's today? Wednesday. I went Monday night to a networking event. It's one that I'd not done much of previously, but I had access to the list of attendees, and I knew exactly who I wanted to make sure I had some FaceTime with. They weren't new people. They were people that I've already got established relationships with, but I was looking to deepen those relationships. And I was able to talk to each one of them while we were there, not at length. It's not what the purpose is, but I wanted to make sure, hey, I value you, and just take that deeper. So the next time I see them, it's a little bit more. It's kind of like making a deposit in that relationship bank.
Absolutely. Of course, I'm probably the only one that's been guilty of this. I go into an event and I just want to be a business card collector. You know, I'm the social butterfly bouncing around the room. And how many business cards can I collect? And that's about building contacts. What if you want to build connections? And so now I've learned, if I can meet one, two, maybe three people tops at an event, but I can create a real connection with them and understand their needs, and they can understand my needs, and we can collaborate with each other. It's a whole lot better than just exchanging business cards. And in fact, I threw a stack of business cards away yesterday as I was cleaning up my office. You know, I've stored those contacts in my phone. Many of them I'll never speak to again, to be perfectly frank and honest. But there's several of them that I made a true connection with. And that's what I think we want to create at this event is, and if you're going to other events, you know, not just our event, we want you to get value of listening to this today. If you're going to an event, think of one, two, tops three people that you can make a true connection with, and that's going to serve you better in the long run.
Well, and that's a great point there, Brian. As you're talking, I'm looking at the other side of my desk, and there's like 3 Ziploc bags full of business cards that are waiting to be tossed out. But you know, they were lost in my papers and stuff. I just like tossed them, you know, and you know, it's absolutely a great point. We don't follow up. We just collect and, oh, I remember that person. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. And move on to the next person. But I think the point that I value in all of this is, am I and both of you pointed this out, am I researching in advance who's going to be there? Do I know them? And if I don't, maybe go and stalking them, virtually stalking them to learn a little bit more about them and start a conversation. But if you know them, yeah, go and develop something deeper and follow up afterwards. Right. And this is about energy. This is about, going in and Wes, when you're building that event, right, you're hoping to build that energy in the room to create the kindling for something that the group will then take and explode upon and really walk away with that enthusiasm, enjoyment. That was the best event I ever went to, is what, right?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, guys, I ran into a friend this morning that I've asked to do a program for a small group that I'm serving as a president of our chapter, blah, 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 for, and he was going through, here's some of the things that I do. And he's nationally known, internationally, and he travels all over the place. He's a political science professor at a large university, and he does all this different stuff. He's got a really cool story, and people ask him all over the place. And he's got a pretty high dollar keynote, but he's willing to come in because he lives local and do a short 15, 20-minute program. And he says, yeah, I did this and I did this. And I used that same word you just did, Joe. I said, yeah, I've stalked you. I mean, we see one another at the gym 3-4 times a week. We've developed a good friendship, but I've been really, Brian, I'm going to say it, intentional about how do I learn more about this guy. And if he asks me questions about me, I'll share, but I'm far more interested in him and not for what can he do for me. I'm happy that he's willing to do this program, but I'm thankful for the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we all have in common, we got our start somewhere along the lines in the Maxwell community. And I've read and studied John Maxwell for more than 20 years and all that stuff. But I tell people all the time, one of the most valuable things I've gotten in that association hasn't been the content licensing, hasn't even been the direct mentorship through the faculty. It's been the relationships. And I would say each of you are part of that relationship. And I can point to 2 other guys that have developed fantastic relationships, actually 3 or 4 that I look back to and say, hey, these were all things where I met them at an event. And it's really compounded because each of us have been intentional about how do we continue adding value to each other.
And not only that, but somewhere down the road, you do something for that person, or that person does something for you, and you build something. Like Brian and I, built up a relationship. We did some things together, and we're on this Voices for Leadership community together, the 3 of us, and more. Right? There's 60 plus. Let's just say 60 plus, headed for 80 plus.
Mm-hmm. And I got it tabulated. It's 67 today, so we're good standings here.
Nice, and that's not bad for a couple, for what, a year plus or whatever, of just bringing people together that have a like desire to speak on behalf of what makes a good leader. But there are opportunities to just support each other, to develop something together, or just be there in some way to help, in an event, or help somewhere down the road, support them online and in the social media, just kind of hang out there and be a voice for them.
So let's kind of focus back to the Voices for Leadership retreat. I've mentioned it several times, but if that's something someone's planning to come to, and Brian, if I'm understanding, you've probably got somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 seats remaining. That's about it. Is that a fair statement, or is there maybe a little bit more?
You could say 15 at this point. Yeah, we're looking good.
Okay. So not a lot of space left. It's 6 weeks, just over 6 weeks away. And it's really looking at now, if you notice, this is our 3rd live stream that we've done that's really geared to how do you get the most value. We've had different topics, but it's really geared to promote the event, but also to make sure the folks coming to the event have the best experience possible. So what are the things that you would encourage somebody that's even considering grabbing one of those last 15 or so spots to really plan for, to make sure that they get the most value from it, if that's something that they choose to be a part of?
Well, Wes, one thing we intentionally did is this is going to be a small, intimate group. It's not going to be difficult. We go to these huge events, we get lost in them. We're going to put you at a table of 5 people. You're going to really get to know those folks, but we're also going to do some rotation throughout the event and make sure you get cross-pollinated across our community. And we're going to have our, the first thing I'm very looking forward to is our meet and greet. Some of these authors, I have not met them in person. We've done a lot of Zoom calls. I've read their chapters they've submitted, but I just haven't met them in person. I'm looking forward to just making that real, handshake connection and finding out more about them. I want to get my book signed by all of our authors. That's a goal of mine. I've got it by the local authors, but I'm looking forward to getting the book signed by all of them. And that's what we're creating, just this community. And we've got a day and a half of really awesome events, 2 great speakers. But what I'm really looking forward to is that collaboration piece where we sit and we talk about ways that the people that show up can collaborate with each other and walk out of there with relationships that you mentioned earlier, but also with some intentional desire to work together, to say, okay, I can support you in this area, you can support me. Let's build a relationship. Let's build some trust here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we all know John Maxwell. People on the video on the replays here may not know how John practices, how he gets ready to speak, to connect with somebody when he knows who's going to be that person, and he prepares. He builds pages of questions to ask that person. Right, get curious about that person. I think if nothing else, that's a great relationship builder, and I've practiced that when I'm getting ready to get network or connect on a one-on-one. And that's what's great in this setting, is that we're going to have that opportunity not only to hear the speakers, but to connect with the speakers individually, but also to connect with each other individually. And there's questions that we can ask each other because we want to get curious. We want to go deeper.
One thing that Cindy and I have learned is there's going to be things that we see. We need to go in with that specificity and intentionality and understand, hey, how do I get those things that I need right now? And we can be really, really focused on those. But there's always some side benefits. And what we've seen over and over and over is we hear a thing, we meet a person, we notice something that's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road. There's this light bulb moment that says, here's where I can apply that. Here's where I can reach out to that person. Here's how we can develop that relationship. So the event itself is powerful, but there continues to be ways that if you do it right, if you plan it, you get long-term return on investment. Somebody is apparently at my house. Do you hear my dogs going nuts right now? They're rescues, so we can't kill them.
It's just another opportunity to connect with somebody.
So what other thoughts do you guys have? Joe, I see some different notes that you've got here, and these are really neat. Do you want to touch on any of those? Or Brian, do you have any other thoughts that you would like to poke in? I've got a few wrap-up comments I'll make, but I don't want to be the only person chatting here.
Well, I think there's this one point that I think underlines all this is you can't connect if you're feeling less so. You're feeling crappy, to use a word. You got to eat, you got to sleep, you got to exercise, not only during the event, but also prior. So you're coming in with energy. Energy begets energy, and you got to be prepped for it and continue on. This is a journey. This is not a quick short race and you're done. The baton has a lot further reach to get to that next person to carry on, to create that ripple, to create that potential life-changing, could be a life-changing, but more than not is just a good friend, create a good friend.
Joe and Wes, I heard both of you talk about stalking somebody you want to meet. I think that's a great way to set it up. For those that are put off by that word, it's preparing and researching. So think about that. If there's someone, if you're going to an event and there's a speaker, somebody that's well accomplished. We have a couple well accomplished folks at our event. go to their LinkedIn profile, find out more about them, maybe buy one of their books and support them in that way, but also find out a connection point that you have with them and reach out. It's amazing. I've been astonished at the times when I volunteer at an event to help, and that kind of gets you the backstage experience, and you get to really meet and know these people. And so that's just something else. Just be prepared. When I go to a large event, I get the list of a few hundred people, and I'll highlight maybe 20 names of people that I think I could make a connection with. Now, remember, I said I limit it to 2 or 3, but I filter it by the 20 that might be. So now if I don't find all 20 of them, at least I found the 2 or 3 that I can make a true connection with. So being prepared, thinking about, what am I going into this event for? And what do I want to take away from this event? Those are just be prepared is what I would encourage people to do if they're going to an event, any kind of event.
And then tell somebody about it.
That's powerful, Joe. I mean, that even, it's not so much about sharing, but sometimes it's about just holding yourself accountable. If I've told somebody, here's what I want to get and here's what I want to do, it seeds it further into my mind, and I make sure that I hold myself accountable to follow through on what I said I was going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wes, that's great. And Joe, you shared that example where he was sent to an event to bring the information back to people. I saw a study this week. If you are told to do that, you go into an event knowing, okay, I've got to bring this back and be responsible for delivering it. So Joe took 10 pages of notes. You know why? Because you're 93% more. You're going to retain 93% more information when you think you have to deliver it again to someone else. So what a great way to think about, hey, if I'll retain this, I can share it with others and they can gain the value from an event I attended.
Now, the one last piece I'll share on this, guys, is it's important to have a plan going in. It's important to execute that plan. It's important to make sure you capture those notes, make those connections, develop those relationships, and so on. But it's equally important to make sure you've got a strategy for how are you going to follow through. So I remember Joe and I were talking about going to different events and so on. I often reference my former HR manager, and he says, Wes, you better show me return on investment, how you're impacting productivity, profitability, yada, yada. And I would always go, and typically, if it's a weekend event, you're going, okay, I need to get home right away. We've got, as soon as the conference wraps up, we've got flights booked back, or we're hopping in the car. I remember driving home from an event at Opryland in Nashville. It's about a 9-hour drive for us. And me and a fellow that I'm working with at the time, we just went to this long event. We got a lot from it. And we're on the way home. We jump in the car as soon as it's wrapped up. And we're on the way back. We're talking through, but obviously driving. And in those days, didn't have many laptops and Wi-Fi and so on. We're talking about, okay, when we get back to the plant, the facility we worked in on Monday, we'll carve out some time. Well, the challenge was we'd both been out for several days, and we were overwhelmed when we got back. He was the lead of an assembly line. He had 2 or 3 lines he was responsible for. I was digging out. And guys, it took weeks for us to carve out the time to be able to put together that presentation that we were responsible for, and to really begin to drive the actions that would produce results that we were also responsible for. And what I learned from that is, before we ever leave any event, how do I make sure I've got that strategy in place to really bake it out so I don't have to carve it out when I get back? And I remember distinctly walking by a small conference room at that same event that we were leaving. As we were hopping in our company van to drive home, I saw one of the companies where I knew some guys. They had a small conference room for the attendees from their company, that they were doing exactly that before they ever got in their cars, before they ever got in the planes and went home. So they made sure they had that strategy wrapped up then and there as part of their conference. So I would challenge, and we do that with you guys host Live to Lead as well. So when we do that here, that's one of the things that we're talking to the companies that are partners or have full tables. How can you do each of these things to make sure you're getting the most value from it? Now, I'd love to tell you everybody does it. That's not true, but it's not because they weren't told, right?
And one, I think, not buried, but underlining all this is the fact, one, you're listening more than you're talking. And, that upper level of listening is, don't have the next question. Yeah, you go in and prepared, and you got a list of questions you want to ask this person, but don't go down the list, because listen to what that person is saying. Because one, they may have said it better than what your next question is going to be. But two, you might want to go in deeper on that, and it will unlock something, or somebody else pops into your conversation. If you're standing just in the hallway of the conference or the event, and somebody walks up and you might feel, oh, why are they bothering me? Don't they know I'm trying to talk to this person? But they just inserted something that is adding value to, in that moment you walk away and say, wow, I'm glad I had that opportunity to talk to so-and-so, but I was open to this.
Joe, you bring that up, and we're talking about being intentional. We're talking about getting the gusto from an event. And when you're standing talking face to face with someone, you can do an inviting posture. So you can actually turn at a 45 degree to each other and invite that third person in. And as a third person comes on, you can open a little bit more and get so that you realize, sometimes people are intimidated by people that are face to face. So just, that's another thing you could take away from this. Another thing I want to share, my mom shared with me years ago about getting a gold nugget from an event. You may have a lot of event things you're going through. Hopefully, if you're listening to this day, you get nuggets from each of us. But if you can go to an event and just realize, all this may not apply to me today, but there's some nuggets I can take away, things that I can take away and practice as soon as I leave here. I love Wes's idea about the reflection. You just think about, okay, what did I learn and how can I apply this to my life?
Great points.
Amen to that. And again, we'll go back to, we hope this serves you as we're doing these segments, and we're able to hop on and do some live stream stuff, whether you're with us live or you're catching the recording. We hope it serves you wherever you're at, whatever event you're looking at, in this particular case with getting the gusto from your next event. But most importantly, especially if you're a Voices for Leadership contributing author, we hope it gives you a scope of, here's what is coming. Here's what Brian and Joe have worked really, really hard to put together for the author's retreat on April 14th and 15th. And gosh, I'll say it one last time. If you've not been to the St. Petersburg, Florida area, holy crap, do yourself a favor and learn what nice beaches are all about, right? So anyway, with all that said, guys, anything else before we call it a wrap for today?
No, it's great to be with you both.
Yeah, thank you, Wes and Joe. I learned so much from you. We have these calls, and I'm grateful that we are able to share this with those that are watching this and listening to this, that we're looking forward to adding value to you in any way we can.
Indeed. And again, jump on. Oh, I didn't share it. Let me do it right quick. So the banner's there, and we can put it in the comments wherever this is streaming. So the registration is still live. And like I say, only about 15 spots left. VFLcommunity.com, VFL_retreat_registration. Look forward to seeing you there. Make it a great day, guys, and God bless.